Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. We are broadcasting live, day 2 at DRJ, JW Marriott. I completely forgotten it. No. JW Marriott Desert Ridge Resort and Spa.
We will get the name of the hotel right.
I got it
by
right once
hour
yesterday.
10, we promise.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm James Green. This is Alex Fullick. We still don't know who is Speak and who is Spark. Speaking of which, this hour of the broadcast is brought to you by Speak and Spark, the Speaker Bureau Marketplace, connecting event leader with speakers, trainers, and consultants in the cybersecurity, business continuity, disaster recovery, emergency management, and resilience fields. Their mission is to connect audiences to experts, which sparks knowledge and fosters learning. We're going to talk a bit more about our sponsor in a minute, Alex, but we have our first guest right off the bat. We are 2 minutes in, and we have a very exciting guest joining us.
Yes.
We'll let our guest get situated.
There we go. And if you could put the microphone by your mouth.
Excellent. There we go.
Welcome to the broadcast, Cheyene Mariling.
Thank you.
Welcome, Cheyenne.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to
good
see
to join
you.
you.
Yes. You've been, I think, stopped at the booth now for every single live broadcast we've done.
Yes.
You know,
we need to get her like a platinum badge or something special and shiny. So Cheyenne, you just got off stage.
Correct. Yes.
So can you share with the audience, for those of us not in Phoenix, what you guys were talking about today?
So we were highlighting the compensation data findings and the evolution in the trends that we've been seeing from a diversity standpoint, and then what the trends are really exposing about the diversity specifically within our workforce, right? Because I can guarantee you, I've been doing this now for 25 years, and the profession looks completely different than what it did over 20 years ago. So yes, but I am kicking myself because we didn't start gathering data on ethnicity or gender until 2018. So, but still, regardless, the trends were compelling.
Interesting.
How about a couple of nuggets? What kind of things have you discovered?
Absolutely, of course. So the data, I'm just going to go from memory because I have nothing in front of me. But the data showed that 78% of the respondents in the US were Caucasian, just under 4% Black, African American. And but what's interesting is that when you look at 2018 to 2023, that data point increased internationally, meaning that the Caucasian percent of respondents went up internationally during that time, but in the US, that data point went down, it decreased, meaning that it became more and more diverse within the US. At the same time, percent of women in the industry from 2018 was at 42%. The data is now showing 32%. So we're becoming more diverse from an ethnicity standpoint, but then as you look at gender, it did not improve. So that was interesting data point to me, because when I'm recruiting for companies, I do see that they do strive to get a diverse workforce. So perhaps you see a little bit of improvement, but there's definitely still things to improve upon, right? We also noticed that 4%, there was a gap of earning potential between men and women of 4%. And interestingly enough, women between 2022 to 2023, their compensation on average increased by 12%. Where in the US it was 10% and internationally 7%. So that helped narrow the compensation gap to 4%, where back in 2018 was 11%.
I was going to say, that's interesting. The gap is actually smaller than I thought it would be, and that's good news.
Yes, and we also noticed that overall, when you're looking at the data, women and men are pretty on par, meaning with degrees and certification and years of experience. It was very similar. You couldn't really find anything in the data point that said, well, there's more men have degrees or certifications or what have you. But what was interesting is that back in 2018, we were continuing, there was definitely attracting younger women to the industry more than younger men.
Okay.
And that trend continued into 2023. We also noticed that more women, a higher percent of women were in leadership roles compared to men. And more women were also leading risk, resilience, business continuity committees and boards more so than men.
What do you think's caused that change over the last 5 years? Because that certainly, if you look at the employment world overall, that doesn't match up with trends. So our industry sticks out in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look across the industry, I mean, there are definitely very sharp women out there that are
Yes.
going out there, and they are very career focused, and a lot of the women that I personally just admire. And then you look at some of the young women coming up in the industry, and again, that admiration is still there because you can see them as just natural leaders, right? And it's interesting with just within our profession, I think, they always say that the women within this profession, you have to have a certain amount of empathy and what have you, some of those soft skills that I think work really well within our profession.
Were there any surprises that have come out? Because usually when we talk each year, there's always something that kind of knocks you sideways. Like, where'd that come from? Were there any of those this time around?
Well, when you look at all the data as a whole, when we wrote the report, we really focused on highlighting the demand within the profession and that the continued demand. And I think earlier this year, there was a lot of hesitation and worry about the financial markets and some of the smaller banks closing. What is that going to mean for, everyone out there, but also specifically within our profession? So what we saw in the data was just the sharp increase in compensations on average. I know that it was 10% in the US, but I personally know people that got 20-25% bumps up with their salary, during COVID. But the demand is so very high, not just because of COVID, but because of the supply chain resiliency issues, the geopolitical issues. Then you also have companies that are upgrading their systems and applications, which obviously that's IT service continuity, but that still maps back to having to map your program to the governance piece, right? And then this shift from not just business continuity, but to resilience management. And some of the regulations are being put out by Bank of England. So all of those things are just catapulting the demand. And so the overall kind of wow within the report is the demand is there, and the increase in compensations and the pool of candidates is smaller. So we also noticed that less people were changing jobs in the last year because they all made a job change right after COVID. During COVID, they didn't change jobs. And then right around late 2020, 2021, they all changed jobs. And then so now the pool of candidates is smaller and companies can't fill their openings with the increased demand at the same time.
So our industry is finally now getting the recognition it needs. And now we don't have the people here to fill the positions.
Yes. And as an industry, we've always been really bad at attracting new people. Yes. And then some people get into the industry and then they all go off and might do cyber instead. Or they get into the industry and they get into third-party risk management, which, yes, it still falls under that umbrella of resiliency, but they specialize in one particular discipline and they get attracted away and they may only spend a couple years doing, business continuity, what we consider business continuity resilience management, right?
So Alex and I spent some time yesterday talking about the shifts in the market with, work from home or being called back to the office or hybrid. What are you seeing in our industry over the last 6 months? Because we know during COVID, obviously, many employers for the first time said, you can be anywhere, you can be remote. The employers that you work with, the organizations that you work with now, what have you seen? Like where are we trending?
Yeah. And it's not just talking just to organizations, but also having those conversations with, people out there within our profession, right? The practitioners. And many of them, they'll come to me and say, Cheyenne, I'm kind of looking for a new job because now they want me to come back into the office full time. And they can't do that because many of them moved to a different location.
Yeah.
So they're kind of caught under the gun and now they're trying to find something. So those remote jobs, when they're posted, they are becoming rarer and rarer, but the number of people that apply to those remote jobs is just astronomical. For example, I just posted one with one of my clients, and I know for a fact they got over 400 applicants to that one job. And then I'm also finding that when I talk to my clients, most of them are hybrid. There's very few that are actually 100% in the office. Most of them are hybrid, 2 to 3 days, but they still want you to be within that geography, right? Because you're coming into the office. So it'll be very to see what happens in the next couple of years with the work from home and which companies are going to continue that. Traditionally speaking, technology has always been probably the best industry sector that will embrace that.
Okay. So you mentioned right now there's more demand than supply. So for
Mhm.
those organizations that are looking for either 100% in office or you have to live within 100 miles of one
Mhm.
of our offices, what are they doing to attract talent and compete with
Well,
those
they're
other
definitely
organizations?
increasing compensations to try to get that person or that individual because their opening goes open longer and longer and longer. So they have to adjust their compensation to be competitive.
Okay.
Also, many of the companies aren't aware of how much the compensations increased since 2020, correct? So they kind of get a little bit of shock when they do post the job and no one responds because now many of the companies you have to post what the compensation is when you post the job.
Mhm.
So people can see that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then I think, at the end of the day, yes, people want to be well compensated, but more importantly, they want to really enjoy what they do. They want to be with an organization that has that good culture. So getting back to your question, companies are going to they're going to, of course, push out the messaging of their culture and what they do, and maybe perhaps have a half day on Friday, whatever it may be as well.
I find it interesting that at one point organizations were looking at, the one good thing that came out of COVID is, wow, we're now able to look at for applicants way outside our geography.
Mhm.
This is great. We can look at people around the globe. And now that they have some of these people that are all over their place and
Mhm.
not in near their local facility, they're trying to get people into the office.
Yeah.
And so people are out there are going, well, I can't come into the office. I
Mhm.
now live way too far away for that. And so what's happening to me, because we talked about it yesterday too, that there's a little bit of a us and them. You get to work at home all the time now, and I have
Mhm.
to go into the office 2, 3 times a week
Yeah.
because I'm closer. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that that's an issue and a problem of their own making.
Mhm. Yeah, and also people didn't realize too when they sometimes moved away, thinking, well, I'm remote, I can work anywhere. Well, not if the company's not set up as an employer within that state.
Yep.
So some people found out that they all of a sudden were out of a job because the company, once they found out after a certain amount of time, they couldn't process their payment because you have to file for that state and you have to take out the taxes according to where that person resides, not where the company is. So
Yeah.
that was an interesting kind of like, ooh, I didn't realize that. And no one communicated the message. They just assumed everyone's going to stay put where they lived.
And we've seen some states are more complicated
Mhm.
to set up as an employer or they want to stay away from, like you said, the pay transparency laws. So I've seen some organizations say you can live anywhere in the US except these 5 states.
Yeah.
So, and if you're already living in those states,
Mhm.
you have to move. It's an interesting, I feel like we didn't have these discussions before COVID, and now organizations, employers have this whole new set of challenges where you
Yes.
used to, like, if we were in Phoenix, where we are right now, you were
Mhm.
looking at talent within 50 miles of Phoenix. And
Mhm.
now, like Alex said, you can look wider, but then there's all these complications that I think organizations now have to manage through.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm not a practitioner, but even trying to manage people when they have, you have to think now not just the plan you have in place for your current facility, but what about everyone's home? What does that mean for your program as well when you have all these individuals that are working from home?
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people the last 2 days about,
Yeah.
physical security, business continuity, risk, PII. If
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm now in my house versus in the office. Those are, I think a lot of organizations are behind in terms of thinking about all of those areas of risk that they've opened up now.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And then you break that down too, with people working at home. Some I don't know about in the US, but I know north of Toronto, people are now living up in cottage country
Mm-hmm.
where power isn't always as reliable and internet's not always as reliable. But then people that used to live in Toronto now may have moved to Montreal, but still working for the same company. They have
Mhm.
stronger power. The internet is fine. So people are moving all over the place. And now that's adding another layer of
Mhm.
complications.
And you saw that with the Rogers outage in Toronto. You had a company that supplies your internet and cable and cell phone.
Mhm.
It all went out. That person in that area has literally no way
Yep.
to communicate with anyone.
Mhm.
And I was one of those
You
people that
were
were
one of those
impacted by
people.
that.
Oh,
Alex
no.
is one of the most reliable people I know. We were supposed to have a call at like 9 a.m. and he didn't join the call and he didn't respond to my text or my email or my phone call. And I was like, did Alex die? I was so worried. And then I saw in the news that the whole area was
Yeah.
knocked out.
Yeah.
So, and that's something employers, like you said, I don't think are prepared for. What happens if your employees, they probably don't have a backup generator. They probably don't have a secondary internet provider. They probably don't have a different type of cell phone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a different world now.
all right, we
Completely.
know you have somewhere to be, Cheyenne. We're
Yeah.
going to ask you one question unrelated. So I found out before the broadcast that you're a Packers fan.
Absolutely.
So what is your prediction for the Packers this year?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like, you know, I love the fact we beat the Bears recently because, you know, but apparently the Bears are really, really bad this year. So that doesn't say much for us, right? I'm always a little bit scared when you have a new QB and going into it and what that's going to look like. But so far, Love's looking great. Like he looks solid and his numbers are, I think they even showed to be better than Rodgers, right? So,
okay, so do the Packers make the playoffs this year or not?
Well, of course, I'm always going to say they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, come on, yeah. But I don't want to pump them up too much because then I'm going to be so disappointed. So I go into the season kind of like, okay, let's go. I'm excited.
Okay, well, we'll follow up in a few months.
Yeah, we'll see how that
where your
is.
team is.
Exactly.
We'll probably see something on LinkedIn if it doesn't go well.
Yeah, I'll do a running video and comment
We can
about
talk
that.
football. I would
Yes,
love that.
exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
Cheyenne. I really appreciate you stopping by,
Yeah.
and it's great to have you on.
Yeah.
Another live broadcast with us.
So
Always a pleasure.
if people want to learn more about what you do or the services you offer or that compensation study, where's the best way for them to find?
I would say probably
you?
just go to LinkedIn.
Okay.
LinkedIn. Cheyenne Mariling is just such an unusual name that you can quickly find me and reach out and ask any questions about compensation or careers or hiring. You know, I'm right there to help.
Okay, great.
So
Great.
very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Cheyenne.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy DRJ. And
I will. Thank you.
great. Thank you.
If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.